Today, the Wodonga community practice has been making local connections at a health physical education conference that's been held here in Wodonga. SERSH has been supporting this conference because we see it as a really great way to connect community of practice members to other members of the Wodonga community, particularly those in education, who haven't had a chance to come along to the community of practice, but we think have really strong synergies with what we've been doing and learning about with Moira.
Context in which it occurs. There's a whole background to this.
Today we've had Moira speak at a keynote address as part of this conference, and that engaged a lot of different people that we haven't been able to make connections with previously, particularly male teachers who I think have felt quite disengaged because it's a very female-dominated environment. So we've been able to make connections with lots of male teachers. We've also heard from Jenny Walsh, who's been talking about sexuality education, particularly in the primary school cohort.
We need more men involved in teaching this topic. So that's just, every time I run a workshop, it's mostly women and a few men.
I think the big thing that will come from today for the community of practice members is that we're starting to make very tangible connections with the community. So we're taking what we're learning in our monthly meetings and we're talking to others about it. And hopefully we'll start to see some significant real changes in how people are working with young people and creating better connections where young people's sexual health and well-being is a priority, and it's starting to be addressed more holistically within the secondary school and primary school environments.
Understanding and practicing respectful relationships is important as the 3 R's. Reading, writing and arithmetic for creating successful and harmonious society. So the issue of trying to develop respectful relationships goes beyond a particular curriculum item, which is powerfully important about how you do that. But it has a bigger context and a bigger goal, and that goal is to change the world in which we live, in which violence is not acceptable, whether it's to women, men, children, in whatever context. That none of that should ever be acceptable, but we're not at that point yet. So we need to find ways to do that, and obviously education is always fundamental to the idea of how we bring about change. And we also argued that it was never too early.
The feedback so far today has been fantastic. Moira's keynote address created some really interesting conversations over the lunch break. People have been asking us about the community of practice and how they can become involved, and it's giving us some strong ideas about the direction we should be headed in for the next 12 months, particularly about making more tangible connections within the community and maybe taking our meetings into other environments, such as into the school setting or into other workplaces where people can't necessarily make it along to our meetings, so we'll take those meetings out.
There is a dire need in our schools. I'm a school leader, and I'm so happy that I'm here today to work with classroom teachers and teachers of health, PE, outdoor ed, because to support them in their work, but also to look broader and make a difference in a school-wide approach to respectful relationships.
Some pretty topical stuff and some pretty full-on information, so it needs to be a whole school approach. Getting parents on board is going to be super important, I think.
1 of those and 4 of those, and that's the number of women who will experience sexual and domestic violence, so they actually build it into their training.
Moira talked about in some strategies, even the one she said about like outdoor education, sort of popped into our minds, and we'll sort of agree in that with like looking at risk and rock climbing and everything like that. And I do see it's a very important part in education and within society today, as society's been exposed to all these different factors.
It's very clear that we can't do this work on our own. Making connections with agencies, with families, sporting groups, you know, broadening things out so that it becomes a community-wide approach, I think, is another enabler.
It's really good to be able to get everyone together and have that opportunity to catch up with people and really talk about how best to get it into your school setting.
Enabling starts with the school leaders. I would love to say that it'd be great to have more resources in the school to support this important work, listening to Moira Carmody this morning when she talked about, you know, the 3 R's being fundamental to learning. We've now got 2 more R's, respectful relationships.
That's definitely going to be worthwhile implementing it across the state.
I think it needs to start today, and I think it is starting today.
It's extremely important work, and there is a lot of guidance now being developed for you in Victoria around this, and we're going to be watching it.
Moira really helped in terms of letting us know what local resources there are around and how we can create connections within our community.
There's a lot of information available about sexuality education and respectful relationships. If you're looking on the internet, if you Google these terms, you'll find plenty of things that you'll be able to utilise in your own environments.